Okay. Hi, everyone. Afternoon for y'all and morning for me. So, I'm posting this video because, with me having to deal with all of this now, I am, behaving myself now that I have to because of medical stuff. So, I'm getting healthier, and I thought that, I would just share that with you guys and why I choose certain things because I feel like I didn't hear this in childhood or even in my young adulthood. And if they tried to tell me, I wasn't listening to that. So now that I have to get serious with life, um, I thought maybe if y'all are having any of these same issues that you could use this information to things I just found. So the first one is ACV water, right? So I got like the bottle of water, and you put 2 teaspoons in the bottle of water, and I can only drink ACV water cold, so it's in the refrigerator. So every Sunday, I get up and I'll make 7 of these, and then 7 plain waters that I put the following in. So this one, they both have cucumbers, but one has lemon and the other has lime. Can y'all see? I can't flip it in the middle of the video. So this one has the lemon in it, and this one has the lime. And so I'll put one of each in the bottles of waters, and so those two I drink cold. The ACV water you're supposed to drink on an empty stomach for maximum benefit, so that's the first thing I have in the morning. And then the lemon one is for either my drive into work or throughout the day. And it's hot here in Texas, so that definitely comes in handy. I have like a little lunch bag, a cooler thing that I can take with me, and it has that little square block in it. It keeps it cool all day. The other water, at some point in the day, I drink is plain, and that I have to have lukewarm. I can't drink cold, plain water. The other thing that I wanted to talk to you guys about was foods for mood. I'm going to talk later on about the mood in Black community and our diet and our food and everything. Yes, you are right. I used to be a person that ate horribly, and I still miss it sometimes. It's hard trying to change everything all at once, so I am doing it a little at a time. That's all I got. I mean, we'll see if it works. I will say that once I became an adult, I did start eating vegetables, so it's not that bad. But a lot of times our diet was decided for us, of course, and then that is because our parents were used to eating certain things that was decided before for them. If we're talking about our culture, we do remember that at the beginning of all of this, right? We had ancestors that were forced to eat whatever was left. What they were not, anybody that's giving you what's left over is not going to give you healthy things all of the time. So they did the best they could. They made it taste well with seasonings and spices, and that has an important impact on our mood as well, the spices, because it's still something that's being placed into your body. Now, the best type of food is organic, of course, because it's not modified. It hasn't been manipulated. In terms of spices, these are things that we find throughout the earth's surface. It's not something that's made in the lab. So if it comes from the earth and so do we, it probably is a good idea, and it's probably something that will be helpful for us. So with that being said, there has been a group of people who work in various fields that have come together and decided that they wanted to know the actual impact, what everything is responsible for when it's placed in our body, right? So we're going to let them have their expertise. I'm not going to go back and reinvent the wheel. I'm going to trust that they had something, to back them up, right? If you need reference pages or what have you, then, just type it in the bottom and I'll get it to you as soon as possible. I just finished a course where I would be, once I'm done with the certification and everything, I would be able to practice complementary and alternative medicine. So what that means is I have been a professional in the field to help people manage life events and their mood, as well as any disorders, things that they cannot help on their own. That was my career of choice. And so, with that being said, one thing that I noticed that had a big impact on that is medical. Me dealing with my own medical concerns recently means that I thought that it would be great to bridge the two. Something about me being a black woman is that we go to doctors and we don't always tell them everything. There is a fear of the consequences for telling doctors everything. But what I did find through my career was that we're not the only minority that feels that way. There are lots of minorities that have certain practices and they don't talk to Western medical doctors about these practices because there is taboo. The thing about humans is once we got science, we thought that it would be best to just abandon everything else, and that's not always the best course of action. So, things that were being practiced in either religion or recreation. I'm not judgmental. That's up to you. We don't always tell our doctors that, but they do need to know that in order to give us the best information. And that sometimes leads to skewed results, which is why we have some research studies that have to be debunked now as each generation gets more and more forward and open with their activities. Everything that you place into your body is going to have an impact on it because your body is a living thing. It has cells. And in these cells, there are things that help those cells to grow. There are things that help those cells to not grow too frequently. Everything has to work with everything else. It has to be a balanced and delicate system. So there have been people that have studied all of these things, right? They are more scientific than I am, and they have come up with the following. So there are certain foods that help with your mood. For our community, what do we notice, right? We notice a lot of anxiety. It's nervousness, worry, fear, panic. Any of those things would be titled under the entire group of anxiety. And this is something that is less talked about. We don't really get a good picture of anxiety in our community because we package it as something else. We package it as grief. We package it as anger. We try to avoid anxiety because for some reason one of our value systems is to not have any fear. That is not practical, and anxiety has a purpose. And later this week I will upload a video regarding why we need that emotion. It exists and it's valid. It has a purpose. So we notice a lot of anger, right? Well, that also is an emotion that has a purpose. It's not, the problem is not anger itself. The problem is how we respond to and use our anger, and what are the triggers to it, what causes you to feel angry. We also notice a lot of depression, a lot of sadness. And to be honest with you, I think that I would worry more if we didn't have those things in our community because we're not necessarily in the best position. So these would be valid and normal responses to things that we deal with every day. And I think that the problem is not that we have them. Everyone does. The problem is that we use other things to quell those emotions, and we could use our natural diets. We're eating every day anyway. It's something that everybody's doing. So why not make that helpful? So certain foods, that have been shown to be helpful in helping us to manage our own emotional states and our moods. The first section is related to like proteins. Beef, lamb, chicken, and pinto beans. These have been the things that have been the most helpful in managing moods. Now, that's not to say that you can't eat anything else or that you have to eat these in excess if you're going through a stressful time. That's not how it works. What this is saying is that when you place these things into your body, that they have a natural component of helping you to manage mood. They are rich in amino acids. And so I had to try to remember, from when I was in school what the amino acids did. And from yeah, so they are the building blocks. They help us to, that's the first thing you need to have if you're going to get protein into your body. So amino acids help to make protein. It helps with our hormones, and we could that's a whole separate video about, everything that everybody has a problem with in terms of hormonal recently. But our hormones help to guide certain processes that we need throughout growth. If we do not have enough amino acids, not only do we not have enough protein in our body, but we also aren't going to get the right amounts of hormones. And that is doing a lot of damage and disservice to our existence every day. And then finally, the amino acids help out with the neurotransmitters. I'm going to avoid using a whole lot of jargon, and also I'm going to avoid going too deep into scientific stuff because that's not what this video is for. So the bottom line, the basic things that we need to remember about neurotransmitters is that in our brain, right, we have neurons. That helps us to get messages into our brain because we need some type of action, or our brain tells us what to do. The neurons are not all connected. Like, they don't always touch each other. There's fluid there. And so electrical impulses jump from one neuron to the other. These neurotransmitters are there to help that process go smoothly. There are neurotransmitters that are excitatory, which means they cause an action. They are helping your brain to say, yes, it's time to move. And there are inhibitory, which means it tells your brain to tell your body that it's time to not move for right now. The most important ones that we have to remember, and yes, I have a paper for that because I don't just go around remembering these things. And at the end of this, I don't expect you to either. I just expect you to know when you hear it that needs to be somewhere in your diet or on the plate at some point. Just kind of thinking about it in passing, and then once you develop a good routine, you don't have to remember anymore. So we hear about serotonin, right? That is the one that is responsible for well-being. If you have enough serotonin, it reduces anxiety. So when we see things out in the public and it makes us nervous or worried or fearful, before we go into panic mode, we have to have an excitatory neurotransmitter, right? Before you can react or do anything. Or if we realize that the threat is not credible, then we have an inhibitory one. So where does serotonin come in with this? Well, when you're looking at whatever the event is, if you have enough serotonin, you're not automatically anxious for the smallest things. And that has to do with, we'll get later in a different video as why we have the anxiety response. So serotonin is well-being. It keeps you from being on hyper alert, hyper awareness all of the time. Our bodies, when we are aware and we have been placed into motion, we then make a chemical called cortisol. We do need cortisol in our lives. And most of the time when people hear cortisol, they're thinking about weight gain, right? It is responsible, if you have too much of it, for weight gain. The smaller amounts help us to respond, and it helps with metabolism as we need it. Other things that cortisol does is memory. It reduces inflammation. It balances the blood sugar levels. It also balances salt in your blood. And the reason why it's with weight is because it works on your metabolism. So, with that being said, a lot of these things are found in our food. Well, not specifically in our food. Our body uses the food to make these things, and it is necessary. So, if you have a person that doesn't have a very good memory, that's probably why. It's something that they're not getting enough of, which is cortisol. You can get too little, and this happens with people who are go on these crash diets. So that's why it's not a good idea to diet all of the time. So in with those two, serotonin and cortisol, we do need cortisol. We can't just go without it. And serotonin helps us to be able to relax and to remain in a state of relaxation. The foods that we talk about today, I'm sorry, the foods that we talk, it's fall, so, I have to deal with allergies. The foods that we're going to talk about today are going to have all those things in it. Melatonin, we all know, is because of sleep, right? So when you eat things that help you to produce melatonin, you're able to sleep well, which also impacts your mood. You get crabby if you don't have enough sleep. If you're in a state of hyperarousal, you aren't sleeping enough. Well, your body uses melatonin to regulate and tell you, okay, it's time for you to go to sleep. You need more of this today. And finally, dopamine. And so what that means is that is a neurotransmitter that helps with motivation. If you have too much of it, then you aren't going to want to get up and do anything. It is the one that tells you, yes, it's time to act. So what happens is, if you have too much of it, then you will see depression. If you have the right amount, you'll see a decrease in depression. Okay. So, best food, we talked about the proteins, also eggs. It's being recommended that we have at least 2 eggs a day, and I feel like I could do that just for breakfast. I'm not going to be sitting around with eggs all day unless, you have a reason for that. But eggs help with brain function, and it helps to improve memory. So in our brain, when I say things help with brain function, what that means is our brain has cells in it, and those cells need certain building blocks in order to remain healthy. And cell damage has not been good for any part of our body. Why would our brain be any different? That's another, people don't realize that your brain needs these things as well. Olive oil, butter, and coconut fat. I have to say, I have never cooked with coconut fat, but apparently there are a lot of recipes that you can use to put it in there. Now, I do like coconut, but it's usually with candy or something that I'm not supposed to have a lot of, so I don't get a whole lot of coconut. But you can use the coconut fat in place of I don't really cook with like fat that much. Now that's something that I switched over a long time ago. So when you're using olive oil, the butter has to be raw and unsalted. And then also another thing to add to that, if you're just looking for specific flavors, would be coconut fat. They're easily digested and they help with dementia. So that's another thing that we have in our community is we have elders who, how many of our elders ever make it to the end without having one of those things, either dementia or some medical malady that causes them a lot of physical pain towards the end? Well, I think the right age for us to start, if you haven't already, would be our like right before, like late 20s at the latest. So you get all of these crises where you turn 25 and you want to know what's different. This could be one of them. Changing just what you cook the food in. And we do have a lot of food that we need to have spiced. And we talk a lot about seasonings in our community. But if we're using the right ones, then we could, that would be one more thing that we're doing in order to help our diet, our health, and our, not only just our physical health, but our mental and emotional health as well. Salmon and tuna. 2 of my favorite types of seafood. The favorite is shrimp, and I'm going to keep eating them for now. But also salmon and tuna. They have omega-3s. And so we hear a lot about omega-3s and brain function, right? Well, there is a reason for that. So omega-3s have a direct correlation as well with mood. I'm inclined to believe that not only do we have a lot of instances that we go through that affect our mood, but also if we're not eating a proper diet, we're already in a bad mood, and then sometimes things escalate, sometimes they take a turn, and they don't have to. Now this is a new thing. I gotta say I was a little skeptical at first, but baked sweet potatoes. So I love steak and then a regular baked potato. Like that is one of my favorite meals. But I did try a recipe with baked potatoes, but I can't eat that with steak. So you can cook it on a with like parsnips and salmon. So that is that's an alternative meal that I am willing to try to replace more often because there's still going to be red meat in there. So when I don't want you guys to take this information and take other foods out of your diet. Blueberries, raspberries, lemons, these are all great things that we need to add into our daily routine more often. Oats. Now, oats have been shown, according to this study, to reduce anxiety. To reduce anxiety. Um, the good thing that I like to think about is the fact that since it's usually a breakfast thing, that you start off the day in a calm mood. You start in a happy place. And I'm thinking that if you go out and you're looking into the world and you can view it through a happy place, then more happy things will come to you and you'll be better able to withstand those small microaggressions. I do also just want to put you guys in comfort that this class that I finished did take into consideration that we go through a lot. And so that would also be part of the assessment. That would be part of the treatment planning, is understanding and knowing, as well as taking into consideration the impact of dealing with chronic everyday discrimination and microaggressions, little small things that you're told to ignore. If it's not that big a deal, that still counts. Even though it's not a big, huge blow up, they add up over time. I don't really know a whole lot of people that can face that every single day of their life and not have an impact. Oh, coffee. So it turns out coffee can still be good for me. It does boost mood and focus. So, I guess that's why it's taken at breakfast as well. You start the day, you're in a happy place, and you are able to focus. So you make fewer mistakes and you get fewer, conflicts. It is something that has to be regulated though, and that is an individual thing. Everyone can't have a whole lot of coffee, and the recommendation is no more than 2 cups. That's 8 ounces, not the big huge 2 cups of thing. And that I'm guilty of that. I have to reduce my coffee intake, but it did not say I had to get rid of it. Beets. I haven't eaten beets, but if you do, I'm sure. And also, let me just add this in, is that there was a recipe book, and so I'll be cooking from some of those things as well. So it's going to have a lot of these ingredients in it. And then after we go through those recipes, then my creativity will come out and I can think of some more stuff that I would want to add into my diet that has these things in it. Now, I did not know that. I put basil in a lot of the food that I cook, but I did not know that it reduces inflammation and it is a mood lifter. So if you're having a bad day, what has a lot of basil in it is Italian food. So I think that might have something to do with why you just feel different after you eat pasta of some type, right? So I think that that's part of it. And if you already know this, then you can click off of the video, okay? Figs. I don't eat figs, but yeah. I do remember those little cookies that we had in childhood. So there were some things that we were given when we were younger that had a benefit and we might not know. So it has calcium, magnesium, fiber, and vitamin K. These things help us to feel full at the end of a meal. It's another mood lifter, and it helps to make sure that you have a steady blood sugar. And finally, the greens that are bitter greens. So this would be arugula, dandelion, watercress, and parsley. Now I put parsley in a lot of stuff, but arugula, I don't have a whole lot of that on hand, and I plan to go and, to purchase some of these things, and we'll just see. We'll try it out together to see if it tastes okay. Um, I have never eaten watercress. It looked boring, and so I did not. But I'll see. We'll try it. Um, these help with our liver and our gallbladder. Now, I do happen to know several people that have had to have gallbladder surgery. I don't know anyone that's had problems with liver. And usually that is something that you have to go to the hospital for, so they catch that early. But in terms of gallbladder, I have had a lot of people who have had problems with gallbladder and didn't know. They stayed for weeks in pain and had no idea why. I do also happen to know that these are people that eat greens, but they don't eat these greens, the ones that taste bitter. They will eat the normal greens. So sometimes we do have to add more things in there. I love cabbage and lettuce and all the other greens that we eat. Spinach, I will put spinach in stuff that where it doesn't belong as well. But these, I think that I probably should add into my diet as well. So I just want y'all to know you're not alone in this. Okay? I didn't eat the best either. So adding these in there, now I'm not going to be making it with cornbread because I don't know. We'll see. I'm going to try it at some point. I'll see if I can make like greens with this in it and if it tastes the same with cornbread. Okay, so in terms of foods, those are the ones that have had a significant impact on mood as well as physical health. Another thing that we already probably know is that physical health does have an impact on mood, and mood has an impact on physical health. When you're not in a good mood, you're not eating well, you're thinking about your emotions, you're just picking up the closest thing to you, and that's usually tied to a memory in your past, like sweets, right? Usually as a kid, you worked and got a reward for something as a sweet. Now, what that does to us in our adulthood is that now we have tied sweet things to elevated mood. So when we're angry, we get ice cream, cake, cookies, things like that. When we're bored, when we're sad, we could polish off a whole bag of cookies and not notice. When we're watching TV and we're already in a state of well-being, we continue to add that connection. So that is a conditioned response. We weren't born craving sweet things. We learned that you did something good that day if you were given something that tastes sweet. So that's what I mean when I say conditioned response. The second part of this class talked about spices and seasonings. And so I guess we all know the seasonings that we use a lot of, right? Well, most of the time, if you are just eating a Black American diet, you have your staples, right? But the people that I know that have used these seasonings usually are able to eat things internationally. So they either got that from family or either traveling. And I think that it would be a good idea to bring that here. So a lot of the people that I talk to, they do travel. They do have family that is from different countries. And so this part might not be for you, but I would be remiss if I didn't add it into this video specifically. So spices and seasonings that have a proven impact on mental health. Turmeric. It's antidepressant and anti-inflammatory. If you have a lot of inflammation, like people who have arthritis, if you notice they're kind of crabby a lot, and I would imagine that feeling every time you move one of your joints or every time the weather changes or whatever, you now have these sharp pains, and I would imagine that you wouldn't be very happy, so you'd have short patience or short tolerance for a lot of other things, right? Possibly we can start cooking them some food that has turmeric in it. Now, the taco seasoning that I have does have turmeric in it, but I don't use it for every single thing. So whenever I'm having Mexican food, I'm probably getting a big dose of that, right? Indian food. I have not had a whole lot of Indian food, but I can see why it would be helpful, and I can start adding more in that. So now I have an excuse to go to Indian restaurants. Curry, of course. So if I've ever eaten curry food, then yeah. Okay, now this is something that I did not know. If you're putting turmeric in something, you probably should also add black pepper in it, and that is because it helps your body to absorb it. I always wonder who was sitting around and did these things, like, let's make chicken like this without the black pepper, and then we'll make another chicken over here and see which one after 3 weeks do you feel better. I don't know. Garlic. Now, I put garlic in almost everything, so I think I'm good there. But it helps with heart health. Huh. Well, that's interesting, but okay. Long story. Ginger. I hate ginger. I do not like it unless it's in ginger ale, but I do drink a lot of ginger ale. So those weird sodas that I like root beer, the big red sodas, Dr. Pepper, and ginger ale. If I have a choice, I'm going to pick one of those. And so I do have a whole lot of ginger ale within like maybe a month. So I think I'm good there. And sea salt. We've been hearing for a while substituting the regular salt for sea salt. And so now I get to talk about what specifically is the reason, because I do not listen to the fine print on those commercials. I can't say that I can remember why they said it. Adrenal function. And so that is where people have, what is it called? There's a disorder that we have a lot of. And it has to do with adrenal glands. And I can't look it up right now, but I will type it in the comments. So, pink and gray salt as well. And if it sounds kind of choppy that I'm saying all of this, it's because I'm going through it here with you guys too. And so I'm also trying to think of ways that I could add it in where, knowing the hustle and bustle of our lives, we have to find ways to make it easier to put into our diet. Something where it'll be more natural and that you'll be able to sneak it in on your family members and they won't know why. Okay. So we do need certain specific fats. These are things that help in our brain, and so the brain does have a component for mental health. It tells your brain tells you what is going to be your emotional reaction to certain stimuli, things that you see, right? Your brain can go haywire if we're not taking care of the cells properly, and each one of those cells, the neurons, are wrapped in fat. So we have to have a certain type of fat. We can't just have a no-fat diet. Butter, the raw, unsalted kind. So when you're making these vegetables, a good idea would be, you get to put the butter on there as well. And the reason is because you do